Super fascinating weekend. Seems like non-energy news, but it is actually energy related, and I'll tie back that here in a little bit. But drama at OpenAI, just fucking bizarre. Let me kind of run through sequential order of events of what's happened over the last couple weeks. So first, November 6th, OpenAI has their dev day. And they come out, they show all these new features. You know, one of the big features for us was build your own GPT. You can actually kind of create this small instance for GPT, train it up on some of your files and data and say, hey, you know, I need you for this specific task. Everyone's pumped about it. You know, they probably kill 1,000 startups with that announcement alone. All these startups that have raised money being GPT wrappers. So lots of buzz about what's happening. With that, Sam had also said that they just had a major breakthrough at OpenAI and was kind of cryptic about it. And there was some speculation that they'd made major progress towards true AGI, of this true human intelligence AI discovery. And along with that, his co-founder had tweeted out, his co-founder is Ilya, and Ilya is like he's one of the leading scientists and researchers in machine learning and artificial intelligence. Like there's a huge fight for him between OpenAI and Google. And I've heard Elon said it was the toughest recruiting battle he's ever had, getting him over to OpenAI. So the dude is, you know, kind of reverent when it comes to artificial intelligence. He tweeted out around that same time something along the lines of, if you value intelligence over the qualities that make humans special and unique, you're going to have a bad time. And so you start looking at those things, it kind of seemed like Ilya is very much kind of doomsday thinking around AI and AGI and what it means.
Basically, his point of view is we need to slow down.
We need to be safe. Yeah. And make sure that these intelligent beings that we're making are aligned with human values. And he actually has this video. It's a good way of thinking about it. He's like, I think about it like humans' relationships with animals. He's like, do we respect animals and love animals? He's like, yeah, of course. He's like, but when we want to make a highway between one city and another city, do we ask for the opinion of the animals? He's like, no, we just do it. He's like, I think that that's how AI will be with humans.
That's Andreessen's point, that it's a really, really fancy hammer. It's a tool. AI is a tool. It is not going to take over the world. And I
agree with Andreessen to a certain degree, because in that same video that I was just talking about Ilya, he has this vision that the world someday is going to be covered in solar panels and data centers. And I'm like, oh, great. So our AI overlords are dependent on intermittent power. They're not They're not going to be around at nighttime. So that's when we can like, and so that's actually like one reason
cave dwellers.
I don't buy into the doomsday predictions, because it's like, unplug the fucking GPUs. And so
we're going to become Chud.
So
cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. We're going to live in the sewers and come out at night.
I just saw something about this, about the what are the tunnels under Paris called? You have to know this.
The catacombs?
The catacombs. We got a guest in here.
Dude, we got a great baseball player.
I know. The athletic ability of this room
has gone up.
Just went up a notch.
Quadruple.
We have Mark's son here with us. Anyways,
dude, I squatted like 180 pounds today.
We'll get back to that. Let me continue on this timeline. So November 6th, OpenAI has their demo day. November 17th, which was this past Friday, all of a sudden, Sam Altman, founder CEO of OpenAI, is ousted by the board. It's fucking bizarre. Fastest growing company of all time by a order of magnitude, and the CEO is ousted. But as things start unraveling, it becomes even more clear just how sudden this was. Microsoft, who's invested, I don't know how much,
billions.
It's in billions, had no notice of it until 1 minute before it was announced. Sam Altman.
Wait, they're on the board though?
No, they don't have a board seat.
They don't?
No.
Okay.
No.
Which is interesting.
Just capital in cloud space.
What is actually, I heard that most of the investment was actually like kind of computational power, GPUs. Okay. And so they don't have a board seat. Sam gets an invite for Google Meet, which is also funny if they're using Google Meet when they're backed by Microsoft, not Microsoft Teams. Gets on there and it's all the board members except for Greg, who Greg's the other co-founder, but he sits on the board. And they say,
he was chairman.
Yeah. Hey, Sam, we're letting you go. And all of a sudden they put out this blog post and it hits Twitter. And the blog post says something along the lines of, we're firing Sam. He hasn't been consistently candid with us and we don't trust working with him.
So they fired him with cause. That must be a with cause.
But all the speculation is that, Sam did something bad externally outside of the company. Usually this goes towards sexual assault or something like this because of how they position that message. So, rumors are just flying like crazy on Twitter. People are pulling up old tweets from Sam's sister where she's saying that her and Jack Altman, or she was molested by Sam Altman and Jack Altman, her brothers, and how they're like these bad people. And so everyone's like, oh, is this what it's about? Because those tweets are only from a few weeks ago. So all this shit's just going on. And then Greg, the other co-founder, he puts out this notice that says, in light of what's happened today, I quit. And I'm like, oh, that's baller. That actually means, he's defending Sam and there's something more to this. Anyways, OpenAI's employees put out this essentially this demand to the board on Saturday that says y'all are going to reinstate Sam by 5 p.m. or else we're all quitting. And the whole company's quitting. Anyways, the board didn't make that deadline. There's all this stuff going down. What I love is that this is all documented on Twitter. My favorite post is Sam Altman makes a post yesterday, and it's of him wearing an OpenAI lanyard with a guest pass. And he's wearing a guest pass, and he takes a picture of it. He says, this is the first and last time I'll ever wear this badge. And everyone's like, oh shit, Sam's going back in there to take over as CEO. And long story short, Microsoft's CEO gets involved. Satya. Is that his? Satya?
Satya.
Yeah. Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, and makes a post this morning and says, we're extremely excited to have Sam and Greg and the rest of the OpenAI team that's leaving joining us at Microsoft to run our artificial intelligence team. Sam's the CEO of it. And so this is just like 4D chess where now Microsoft also has access to the IP from OpenAI through their investment. And so now you just brought on Sam, Greg, and all the team that's following them from OpenAI. Just got this, hive mind of the best AI talent, and you have access to the IP from OpenAI so they can just pick up where they left off. And everyone's comparing it to when Steve Jobs was ran out of Apple, except that was on a 12-year timeline. And everyone's like, this is the AI-driven 24-hour, 48-hour version of Steve Jobs getting ran out of Apple and brought back. And anyways, Microsoft really just kind of flexing and, flexing their muscle, and you're bringing in essentially what was OpenAI.
Defanging the board.
So I have a totally unfounded take on this, but from reading it from abroad, being an energy guy, not being really a tech guy, not trafficking in those circles, what it looked like to me is you had a nonprofit, right, that started up, that then created a division that was allowed to profit, right?
Correct.
A for-profit division, but the for-profit division was not maximize profits. It was we're allowed to create some profits.
That's correct.
And so just from the outside, it looked like a huge fight on how much money should be made, that sort of stuff. And something happened where Sam basically pulled an Eric Cartman and said, screw you guys, I'm going home. And whether he actually quit, got fired, however it goes down, whatever. But it looks like it's a fight about commercialization, and that commercialization is now going to happen at Microsoft as opposed to the other ones.
I think that's pretty accurate. I would unpack that a little bit. So you look at this corporate structure that they have, and it's super complex because, to Chuck's point, it starts off as a nonprofit. They start spinning up these other entities, and where does the board sit? Where are the investors coming in? One, it's just way too complex. Then your actual board is a board. kind of be honest here. It's a bunch of scrubs. Like the only one that actually deserves to be on there is the CEO of Quora, which is still kind of like,
B team.
Yeah, kind of B team. But, we
just flex and call it B team.
But I mean, you used to have Elon Musk, Reid Hoffman. I mean, this wouldn't have happened if you had someone like Reid Hoffman on the board. I mean, or Elon Musk. I mean, you have, I don't have their names written down, but one of the ladies, she's an academic. She's been an academic her whole life, never actually been part of an operator. There's some weird things there, spent a lot of her time in China in artificial intelligence and deep state. So there's a lot of things like, hey, is there like, I mean, OpenAI isn't just a tech company. They have created a material step change in technology, right? This new disruptive force, and there's bad actors. It's always like nuclear, like always, don't laugh at it, but we discovered nuclear technology, and instead of like, oh, hey, how can we give infinite free energy to the world, governments took it and said, how can we kill more people with it, right? It's kind of the same thing with artificial intelligence. And so there's just a lot of, things that could be at play in the background that we're not aware of. But to Chuck's point, I don't think it was just about how much profit. I think that the tension comes down to safety and alignment and commercialization. Sam saying, hey, we're taking this new tech to market and we're going to make a shit ton of money doing it, while you have these independent board directors who don't have any skin in the game. And they're mostly from a safety and kind of altruistic side. And they're saying, we're moving way too fast. This is dangerous.
And Microsoft decided to essentially steamroll the whole thing because it is about profit maximization.
Microsoft's a for-profit company.
There's a couple threads that I think the board, number one, is you never fire anybody super quickly unless something goes down. Mm-hmm. So this might have been a last straw type of thing. Don't know. What's interesting is Sam doesn't have any equity in OpenAI.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm starting to unpack some of these, like maybe it didn't go down exactly, but the fact that Sam is now sitting at Microsoft for profit, having no really, no contingencies or conflicts of interest with OpenAI, I now can do whatever he wants. That's what I'm seeing, because one of the things the board said publicly, which we don't know exactly, but he wasn't honest because he had all his fingers in other pies. Like he's trying to work on new chips with NVIDIA and new things to make AI better, stronger, faster. Maybe this has been sort of in the works for a while. What do you guys?
Yeah, I think I was a little taken aback that he didn't have equity, but now as you walk through a lot of what you laid out,
it was a matter of time,
and how suboptimal this is. I mean, Sam's the commercial guy, right?
That's right.
That's your commercial player. That's what Microsoft sees, right? And so they're now fully aligned. Microsoft's sitting over here in this really misaligned position with this kind of weirdly constructed board with no kind of governance influence. Yeah. Well, we'll just we'll just wait until the coup is finished. And
I think to even add on to that, there was rumors that Sam had already been talking to investors. Like, you knew he was just going to go start this again, right? And I mean, Sam would raise $10 billion at $100 billion pre-money valuation, just given who he is and obviously his track record. And people are like, why would he go essentially take a W-2 at Microsoft? And like, well, one, Microsoft has...
It's a $3 trillion company.
Well, but it has a knowledge base that OpenAI didn't have, proprietary training data, and they have all this distribution through Microsoft Office. So they have a lot to... Plus, they've already budgeted $50 billion in computational power for AGI. So, I mean, infinite balance sheet and resources for Sam to go build this out. And he made a comment on Friday night on Twitter. I think Sam started drinking and it was about to get like really spicy. But he said, if I start going off, the OpenAI board should go after me for the full value of my shares. Zero. I was like, oh shit. I was like, this is about to get good because he has nothing to lose, right? And anyways, so really just kind of bizarre 48 hours there.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at some of the tweets, everyone in the company is saying OpenAI is nothing without its people, and Sam's liking it.
Yeah.
So they're all coordinated around, they've communicated of the message.
And as this is paraphrasing, but as Colin tweeted somewhere in the middle of all this is why I don't have a board.
That's a harsh paraphrase, but I said that's why I don't have any scrubs on my board, which we also don't have a board right now, but we have Chuck here, so that's all we need.
Are you a scrub, Chuck?
No.
I want to know how
Mr.
many
Scrub.
DMs
Mr.
you sent
Scrub.
Andreessen this weekend.
We need a Chuck. We need a counter.
Yeah.
Like, how many
Just start
consecutive
the Twitter
messages?
site
Yeah.
of Chuck sent another DM, but anyway.
No, well, but on that point, absolutely blew my mind. I mean, Sam Altman, when you hear people like Paul Graham and Brian Chesney and all these people talking about Sam Altman, I mean, everyone talks about how good of an entrepreneur he is, and he's one of the best of this generation. And I'm like, it's hard for me to wrap my head around, how did you have such a incompetent board involved in one of the most important technologies of all time like that? It's not the fact of having a board, it's a fact of who you had on your board.
It's an
And
alignment issue.
the immaturity showed in how they went through this, even with that blog post that they put.
Yeah.
Like, it was just a shit mess. And so it kind of blows my mind how all of this has been structured. And essentially the value, I mean, their secondary offering that they're having is at a $90 billion valuation. It hasn't closed. And now, from my perspective, this is how crazy fast it happened. Friday morning, I woke up. I have screenshots of my emails. I was sending out emails, and I sent out one to a friend. Hey, I'm trying to get access to GPT Enterprise. Do you have any channels through Bain? Because right now, I mean, the queue is just so long. And so I'm trying to like get access through some of these bigger partnerships. Sending out those emails on Friday morning. Friday night, I'm like, OpenAI is going to zero. Like, that's how quick. I mean, OpenAI is dead.
But what does Sam mean by this 1 hour ago? We have more unity and commitment and focus than ever before. We are all going to work together some way or other. And I'm so excited. One team, one mission.
I don't know.
Is he talking about Microsoft or is he talking about OpenAI?
I don't know. He says that there's room for OpenAI and Microsoft to work together.
Dude.
But, I mean, he's a killer operator. So and there was already this weird there's so many different ways to skin this cat of like weird dynamics, because there was already talk about some rifts between OpenAI and Microsoft. Because you look at it, Microsoft has contributed a large amount of capital to OpenAI as an investor, but OpenAI and Microsoft have tension because Microsoft's building their own AI. And so they're kind of competing together, right?
I mean, Sam is retweeting Sat Nadella's comment about we're going to work with OpenAI. This might have been constructed the entire time by Microsoft.
I'm telling
sounds
like
like a corporate script.
Sounds way too
there's
planned
also
by
some
someone.
theories out there of, hey, we've had this whole nonprofit structure. How does Sam and team get out of it?
Yes.
And so there's
No
I
equity
don't
entanglements.
feel like we're getting full story from face value.
but this is
what do those
great-
non-competes look like, right?
yeah.
Well, because don't forget too, is part of profitability, commercialization, and all that stuff puts into question every dollar that had been donated to the nonprofit. And so Elon Musk, I'm sure, wrote off, what did he donate? 100 million to
Something
it?
significant.
It was
a lot.
Yeah.
I'm sure he wrote that off as taxes, and he's going, you don't start moving towards commercialization there, because that throws my tax. What's $35 million worth of taxes plus interest?
Well, that's
over
what
10 years.
Elon always asks. He's like, how did I donate money to something that's nonprofit and is now a for-profit?
Right.
And so
CEO, this is Satya's 11 hours ago. He says, we remain committed, the CEO of Microsoft, we remain committed to our partnership with OpenAI and have confidence in our product roadmap, our ability to continue to innovate with everything we announce at Microsoft Ignite, and in continuing to support our customers and partners. We look forward to getting to know Emmett Shear and OpenAI's new leadership team and working with them. And we're extremely excited to share the news that Sam Altman and Greg Brockman, together with colleagues, will be joining Microsoft to lead a new advanced AI research team. We look forward to moving quickly to provide them with the resources needed for their success.
I'm sorry, I just don't
Sam replies going, the mission continues, but You know who is the ultimate, the best on Twitter? Elon Musk himself. This is Elon's reply to that. Now they'll have to use Teams.
Yeah. I love Elon just starting
The worst platform
But that's
ever.
I just don't see where does OpenAI bring value, because the new CEO of OpenAI is the former co-founder of Twitch. Killer business and operator, but you're losing significant portion of the OpenAI teams going over to Microsoft. And so I'm just like, if Microsoft has what's valuable in OpenAI, what value is there in a partnership? But
So here's our get out question. When it all said and done, this is the number that we'll hold ourselves to. I'll even go first on this so you guys can think of the answer. How much in the way of stock options did Sam get as part of his deal to join Microsoft? I'm going to say he got $750 million of options.
I'm going to just go with the clean $500 million.
Clean $500 million.
I don't think they were options, because options have gone
But you know what I mean. Whatever the
long-term equity incentive,
long-term equity incentive.
performance-based.
Yes.
Right.
He got
Absolutely
He got
performance.
What was the
some value.
valuation? 90 billion?
90 billion. Yeah.
It's over $1 billion.
It's over $1 billion. All right.
Single-digit billion.
Because I mean, generally speaking, in at least in oil and gas private equity, management's getting 20 to 30% of the
So this
profits.
might be one of the cheapest investments
Turn everything into a
Microsoft
carried
has ever
interest.
made.
Yeah.
yeah, I think it can be.
Yeah, what do you think?
extremely high.
We didn't ask Colin. You
They're-
didn't get his
how-
answer.
Tough to say. I'm gonna give kind of a variable answer here. So I definitely think that's over $1 billion total comp. But if I'm looking at it on a yearly basis, like I bet that they're paying them $20 to $30 million salary to be over there. And I'm basing this off of, if you just look at like AI positions that these companies like OpenAI, I mean, a lot of their employees are making like $1 million, and that's just kind of where the market's at.
Yeah.
If you're a machine learning expert, like that's what
That's
you're
in
making.
guaranteed comp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Well-
I could see them, getting between $20 and $30 million a year guaranteed comp salary. But man, to get someone like Sam, and let's say that Sam's dropping the effective altruism bullshit and just being a capitalist again. I mean,
He always was a capitalist.
which kind of makes me, I don't know, everyone that I hear about Sam has nothing but great things to say, but I hate I don't have equity. Like, why are you?
This is not, I mean, this doesn't make sense unless you think about this has been in the works. I'm not saying in a conspiracy way, but it's been a discussion. He's like, man, no equity, it's nonprofit, doesn't make sense. I'll join. Let's figure it out. I'm sure Microsoft's been working on. That's probably why Microsoft didn't want a governance, a board seat,
Probably
so they could have this
yeah.
flexibility.
It seems, yeah, it just seems all well too played out that.
I mean, I'm saying this is probably one of Microsoft's cheapest investments of all time. On the other side of the spectrum, another energy story, by the way. Last night, Cruise's CEO, Cruise, owned by GM, spends billions of dollars buying this autonomous driving car company.
Self-driving car, yeah.
Well, their CEO and one of the co-founders resigned last night, which is perfect timing because it's like he's being lost in the noise. But Cruise lost its license to operate in California.
Did he join Microsoft?
That would be a coup. That would be.
They lost
I don't know.
They
don't
lost
want
their
it.
license in California.
They lost her. Yeah, Cruise lost its license in California.
Oh,
they
shit.
can't operate in California.
Well, dude, they were kind of getting screwed over on this lawsuit that they had. I can't remember the case verbatim, but essentially they hit I think
Emergency vehicle.
but the wreck wasn't caused by them. Like a car had hit either a pedestrian or another vehicle. I really need to look this up. Had hit someone and they flew over and hit the Cruise car. And now Cruise is kind of taking the brunt end of it.
Well,
It may be a different one. It was in San Francisco, and the Cruise vehicle was coming through the middle of an intersection. An emergency vehicle was coming the other way. And when an emergency vehicle's coming with lights on and
It's
flashing you
supposed
move
to
over,
stop or
and it
whatever.
didn't respond in time. That may be a different.
Well,
incident.
interesting is the CEO of GM, Mary Barra, projected that Cruise would generate $1 billion in sales by 2025 and help double GM's revenue to $240 billion by the end of the decade.
You know, that's kind of crazy because did we talk about Helion last week on the show?
We did. Yeah.
Did we? But I was laughing because as I was researching that, I found an analyst from like Seeking Alpha or something, and they're like, talking with Hilion's team, they anticipate doing $2 billion in revenue by 2024. I mean, that's coming up next year. And they did 1.7 million in the last trailing 12 months. I'm like, fuck, I thought some of my projections were bad. I'm like,
Oops.
you guys are off by like.
I mean,
that's
Cruise
almost
is the
criminal.
company that I complained about when I was trying to charge my EV at the local fast charger, and all those Cruise's cars were taking up all the spots.
But their technology's cool and it works.
They've burned through, guess what, 1.4 billion of the 1.7 billion they raised.
Damn.
So you've got Cruise, the big, thumbs down, CEO resigns, saying like we're totally not hitting anything, and then you've got this incredible coup on the OpenAI side on the other spectrum, Microsoft looking like they know exactly what they're doing. I'd love to hear Elon Musk's real opinion of what's going on because he probably has his ear.
I also want to add, this is circling back a little bit to Microsoft acquisitions, but I was just looking this up while you were talking because I think that Microsoft specifically, how do we say his name? Satya? I'll get that down.
Satya, let's just say it.
Okay. But they acquired LinkedIn in 2016 for $26 billion. And now LinkedIn's doing $15 billion in revenue. It's a pretty fucking
bad investment.
bad investment. So they've been making some pretty prime acquisitions.
But I mean, the bottom line, and this comes back to something we almost have gotten to the point about talking weekly on the podcast about, is AI is going to be everywhere. I mean, it just is.
Oh, absolutely.
You and I were talking about this the other day. I've gone from in the last 6 months thinking Google was the greatest website ever created to now Google sucks because it doesn't give us the answer like ChatGPT does. And so anyway, at the end of the day, all of this commercialization, AI and stuff comes down to we're going to need a hell of a lot more power, because we'll go back to our often quoted Google search is 1 watt of power. AI-driven search is 5 watts of power.
AI is Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's exactly right.
It's Kevin Bacon.
Damn Bacon.
Yeah.
It's Kevin Bacon.
There we go.
We'll catch you up.
culture
We'll catch you up
reference.
offline.
I just
Colin.
want
we'll tell you what that
ChatGPT
means.
to, at least when I'm typing a message or using Siri in my damn iPhone, and it always wants to autocorrect to what it thinks I'm saying, and it's always wrong. ChatGPT will be like, I know what you're saying, bro.
I get it, dude.
Yeah.
I need ChatGPT to add the like oil fill bro, filter on there.
No, that's
Bro
exactly
filter.
right. So, I mean, at the end of the day, this all just comes back to we're going to need so much more power.
It
And we're
just
so
goes back to
prepared for
it
that.
goes back to
Speaking of-
Ilya's video of the world being covered with solar panels and data centers, and I'm just like, man, we have such a long ways to educate the tech sector on.
Speaking of more pressure
Energy.
on the grid,
Oh,
Fire away, Mark.
this sounds fire. Mark coming in with that transition.
our president is invoking the 1950s Cold War era Defense Production Act to motivate, I think, the largest ever $169 million to 9 heat pump projects across a number of manufacturers. And so we've got a policy acceleration of heat pumps in the U.S. via essentially a war powers type of act, executive action, right?
I mean, which is kind of a holy cow thing to do, of like all the things to use executive power on.
Well,
this day
it's
and age.
consistent in the minds of the proponent with the emergency state and the
climate.
war on climate change. I happen to be perusing LinkedIn. Jim Murchie, I don't know if you guys know who Jim Murchie is. Jim Murchie was an original Tiger Cub, Sanford Bernstein. He describes himself as a professional, non-cyclical energy infrastructure investor now. Brilliant guy, former client. first time I ever heard him speak publicly, he said at a conference back in, I believe, 1999, he was talking about Exxon's buybacks relative to Texaco. And he said, over this time, Exxon has shrunk itself by the equivalent of 2 Texacos. And over this same time, Texaco should have shrunk itself to 0. But I thought what he summarized his fairly long piece on LinkedIn, and I encourage you to go read it, Energy Transition Motivational Speaking, said, but let's not forget about the motives of utility maximizing customers who want the best performance and the lowest price. Buyers of clean energy or electric vehicles want reliability, convenience, safety, and low cost, and not just clean.
Mm-hmm.
Last paragraph. The energy transition will ultimately be driven by 2 powerful forces: returns on capital and consumer preference, just like all industrial transitions. Aspirational policy goals for cleaner energy will go unmet unless policies harness these forces rather than fight them. And so this Defense Production Act invocation looks a little bit like fighting those forces.
Yeah. No,
Anyway.
I mean, look, I mean, at the end of the day, there's going to be so much pressure, and all it is driving up the costs on what I'll call quote unquote non-clean stuff to put it out of business. I mean, that's what they're doing, and they won't just say that.
Yeah.
It's not going to work though. I mean, it's just going to, it's not going to work.
And the sad thing is if we were more thoughtful about it, we could probably use that money much better on R&D for new stuff. We could make some trade-offs on various other things, and that's what kind of gets me, because at the end of the day, higher cost energy today kills just as much as climate change.
I mean, even
does
back
in the future,
even back in my days at Shell, we were looking at the heat pumps. Like, let's get into the heat pump business, going from natural gas to electric. It makes a lot of sense. The challenge is, I mean, even look at, were we passing along like what ERCOT announced last week about how they're going to be short of power?
Mm-hmm.
they went out, basically ran a big bid process to get people to turn on idle power producing assets, and got a big goose egg.
Yeah,
Nobody said they'd do it.
I mean, last week, let's put it in real size. Last week, I live in the middle of the city of Houston.
Mm-hmm.
My power went out for no reason, and thank goodness I have a generator that's primed and fueled by natural gas. Thank God. And I was thinking, if I didn't have that, I'd be screwed. But let's for a minute think, if I have an electric heat pump, I'm drawing more power from the grid. It's just a hard conversation when you try to think about the pragmatism of going electric.
That's the point, is putting pressure on an already
Well,
Did I just
unstable.
master the obvious right into your point?
Yeah.
Mark?
No,
Stating the
I
obvious
thought it
with
was
an
a
air of
great
discovery.
reinforcement.
You guys know the playbook. Like, you add these things and then you just blame Bitcoin mining for
It's Bitcoin's.
Bitcoin mining, blame hydrocarbons, blame Republicans.
Did y'all see this? I'm just looking on my Twitter real quick, kind of cruising through what's happened on the week. Did y'all see this guy that was bashing the Just Stop Oil protesters?
Yes.
In the UK?
Oh, in the UK?
Yeah, love this guy. Someone said that we need to get him on BDE, which we should absolutely try to hunt down who he is. But, Just Stop Oil is in the middle of the road doing a blockade, and he comes up. He's like, what are y'all doing? He's like, this makes no sense at all. You're idiots. He's like, what are your clothes made out of? He's like, my favorite line is, he's like, you haven't thought this through.
Well, the sign they were carrying was made of plastic. So,
Yeah.
They were all wearing polyester.
and they all looked at each other dumbfounded, like, what is he talking about?
But I'm just
And
like,
my favorite line is, he's like, if y'all really want to stop this, go live in the forest and sit in the dark.
Yeah. He's like, leave your home.
It's like the
and live
bumper
in the
stickers
forest.
from the 70s.
But I love this guy. Like, it's finally, it gives me some hope for civilization that we got some people out there with common sense that are starting to come
And I
back.
believe he said it with a British accent. So
No, yeah, no, he was
He
definitely
was
British.
British.
Yeah,
They were
definitely
over there.
British. That's what I'm saying. So they get it.
All right. Real quick, and let's go speed round, because you said you wanted 40 minutes and we're at 35. New president of Argentina.
Yes.
I'm excited. We've got a libertarian, the madman. I'm very excited. Javier, is it Milei?
Malay.
Milei is how. And so that brings up three things. One, he is all about liberalizing energy in Argentina. So breaking up the government monopoly, et cetera, et cetera. That's cool. He's very pro Bitcoin. I mean, he's ready to get rid of their central bank, go to the dollar and all that. But here's what we need to talk about real quick. So we're on the record as saying it. The vaca muerta. Do you know what the vaca muerta is?
Muerta.
Vaca muerta?
Vaca muerta, yeah. I mean, it's
death of something.
The giant.
It's the source rock down there in
Yes.
Argentina.
Yeah,
It is the largest accumulation of fracked wells outside of America, and they are supposedly kicking ass. They're
Where's this at?
And some of the
down in
most
Argentina.
in the
Really?
Tierra del Fuego. It's some of the most. They're some of the most expensive wells as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're running like
Shells down there.
35% more than the Bakken, than the Permian Basin. I've heard it described as a formation that is like the Permian, only with pressure.
Dang, Chuck's.
Yeah, I mean, we
Chuck's
should.
gears are turning. He's like, can I spin up a funder on this?
That's right. That's right.
Bill Von Gotten has been talking about this. Bill is a renowned unconventional, runs an unconventional consulting firm, not a 9-iron from here across the freeway. And he's probably the most immersed in the Vaca Muerta over the last few years.
It's a freaking big 9-iron, by the way, but I'll go with it.
Okay, it's
Driver 9-iron.
driver 9-iron, but it's not far. And so, yeah, I mean the quality of the rock is world class. It's just all of the above ground stuff that has gotten in the way over the last decade.
That's the
right?
challenge
Because
because
the pipelines above ground.
It's
and all
exp-
that
well, it's
mess,
politics.
It's all the
it's
politics
very,
of
very
it.
expensive.
and risking as service providers risking assets in country. At least their assets have wheels, but at some point you're facing kind of knee-jerk nationalization and populism where you never get off of high center in terms of getting going from a development
I
standpoint.
got a text from one of our best energy software CEOs in town, well known. He texted me saying the self-styled anarcho-capitalist who won Argentina's presidency on Sunday plans to ditch his nation's peso and adopt the U.S. dollar as the national currency.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to rant about he loves anarchy. Like he thinks I'm an anarchist. So he's like, hey, we're anarchy, brother. He's actually calls himself an anarcho syndicalist myself, which I don't know what that means. I'm going to look it up.
There's an ointment for it.
The other thing about the Argentine presidential election, it's 32 million votes, all in person, counted in one day in voter ID.
Yeah.
Not making any political statements here, but you got a presidential election done in one day with physical voting and vote counting.
And the problem we have is he doesn't have any control of the legislative branch, either house there. So potentially how much can he actually get done? But
we'll
for
see.
at least
We'll see.
a moment, I'm kind of hopeful. Mark, you want to hit the JPT article real quick?
Yeah, I would just point everybody to read it. It was part of my Sunday evening JPT or LinkedIn perusal. It was a nice summary on what's happened
Mark has
over
an exhilarating life. Yeah, Sunday evenings
over the
sit down
last
and read
decade
GPT.
with respect to all the produced water disposal that we've gone about in the Permian Basin. And it focuses, it's a technical paper, but it's very consumable for the layperson. I think it's a pretty important one. They talk about, the statistics over time and what's going on with the localized pressure around the disposal or injection wells, but more importantly, what's going on with the background pressure. Pioneer started talking about, going to 4 strings of casing in the Midland Basin because of the pressuring up of the background pressure in the St. Andrews. You got sulfate reducing bacteria, which creates an H2S problem and all kinds of hazards. So you're putting away a lot of water, and I may be recalling this precise breakout, but it was surprising to me, and although it makes perfect economic sense, that 80% of the water has gone into the shallower disposal zones, which are above, obviously, the target hydrocarbon zones in both the Delaware and the Midland Basin. Below it, you've got the Ellenberger and the Fusselman, et cetera. Well, those wells cost a lot more because they're deeper.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that was just kind of interesting little gee whiz statistics. Last year was more than 5 billion barrels of water disposal.
Yeah.
And over the course of, call it the 10 or 11 years of the shale revolution and having to do things with water, 35 billion barrels have been put away. And that equals the volume of Toledo Bend, which is the largest lake in the state of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
Dang.
Massive amount of water.
but because we had the recent earthquake event or seismicity event near Pecos, the 5.3, I think you start to see those things outside of climate and emissions come back into focus with respect to, okay, where's industry going with putting water away in inherently incompressible finite places when we're talking about increasing volumes of water, just like we are.
Yeah, because there's a real theory that the possibility of you've got fractures fault and you put a bunch of salt water in there. Guess what? You lubricated it and you wind up getting earthquakes.
Well,
That's not a stretch.
also just overpressuring formations and things of that nature. But one thing it is doing is driving innovation in water recycling and treatment.
True.
And so there is a silver lining of this. So that
No
it's putting
question.
a lot of pressure for those solutions to come out, which won't only be valuable for oil and gas, but probably be valuable to many different industries or aspects of.
And that was the first JPT article I've read in quite a long time.
Don't fool me.
All right, last thing, real quick. 60th anniversary of the John F. Kennedy assassination on Wednesday. I wrote my senior thesis at Rice on the Kennedy
I'm
assassination.
going to go on Clyde Pro and see how many times that has been mentioned.
I know.
on
It's
this
like
show.
Clyde Pro is going to be, now that it's on Microsoft AI.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But anyway, I have not watched the Paramount What the Doctor Saw yet. So, Mark, I'm going to get you to summarize that in just a second. The interesting thing that's kind of come out recently that stirred the debate is a Secret Service agent named Paul Landis has said that at Parkland Hospital, he took the magic bullet off of Kennedy's stretcher and put it on Conley's stretcher. And if that is the case, and there's a whole notion of in the Kennedy assassination, when somebody remembers something 60 years later, oh, okay, maybe you're writing a book for money. I mean, I get that. But the flip side to it is, if that's true, the single bullet theory could not have happened, because as the Warren Commission stands today, Oswald's first shot totally missed the car, hit a curb, shot a piece of concrete up, and hit James Teague, caused him to bleed on his cheek. Then the second shot went through Kennedy, took out, and then went through Conley. And then the third shot went through Kennedy's head and ultimately killed the president. If that bullet was not on Conley's stretcher, but was on Kennedy's stretcher, you can't have the single bullet. And most people, there's a lot of skepticism on whether one bullet that looks perfectly intact could have gone through and caused all the damage to both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mark, you watched it.
Yeah, it's on Paramount Plus, and if you don't have Paramount Plus, it's worth the 1 month and then cancel. It's about 2 hours
Exactly.
long, and really it centers on the eyewitnesses and the doctors who were at Parkland in trauma room number 1. There were 7 of them that are both interviewed individually, and then they come together at the end. Most of them have passed away. These interviews were recorded in, I believe, 2012, 2013, and a lot of the observations center on the fact that the president had a wound right above his thigh in his throat that was uniformly described as what looked like an entrance wound.
Yeah.
And just a little bit of color real quick. So Dad went to Southwestern Med School. The teaching hospital was Parkland. All the folks in that room were my dad's professors. It was also the county hospital for Dallas. And what Dad will tell you is you are not at Parkland for 3 months without knowing the difference between an entrance and an exit wound.
And what did he say about that collection of doctors as well?
And Dad has always said that Kennedy was dead when that bullet hit his head. But if he had a shot to live, it would have been because of the collection of medical talent in that room. Dad said that was the most amazing group of doctors ever brought together.
So there is that evidence that they directly observed and wrote notes about, which were subsequently confiscated and destroyed. And the fact that they had to intubate and do a tracheotomy. So that wound was already there, and basically the official autopsy overseers were saying, well, that's just a function of the intubation and kind of the
Right.
having to punch that hole. The second thing is that the observations, all very clear-headed, and this is a hospital that had dealt with like 5,000 gunshot wounds a year.
Yeah.
So they're expert
It's
in
the
this
county
stuff.
hospital. I mean,
Right.
it's where
And so,
anyone shot that didn't have insurance went to Parkland.
and
Right.
so the back of the president's right side of his skull was missing a pretty large chunk, right?
Yeah.
And subsequent,
That's from an exit, right?
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if
I mean,
anybody,
that's usually
if you've
the
ever
case.
hunted big game, you know what entrance and exit wounds look like.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they wheel the president out.
If you've ever hunted big game.
I
And
hunt
I
small
don't-
game, I guess.
Maybe you should be
It was
more.
not
of a-
like
going
maybe
to
you should
do
be more of a
bear
man,
hunting or
Kirk.
anything.
It was Dr. Earl Rose,
Dr. Earl Rose,
who was the county
county medical
examiner,
and dad's pathology professor.
attempted to stop the gurney that was wheeling the president's body out to take it back to
DC.
Bethesda in DC as quickly as possible. In state law at that time, when there was a murder in a particular county, that autopsy had to be done according to state law. Well, Secret Service agent picked Dr. Rose up by his lapels, the way it's described, and basically said, you need to get out of the way.
Yeah.
And in
And furthermore, at the end, the doctors who were completely in over their heads at Bethesda who conducted the autopsy were doing things like, allegedly, cleaning out all of they removed his brain, and they cleaned out all of the bullet fragments from the skull cavity and then put it all back together. In fact, even sewed up the spot in the back of his
You're
scalp.
supposed to go through and you slice so you can trace the
Yeah.
back. They didn't even trace the back wound. They stuck their finger.
Well, let me
You-
ask
you know a lot more-
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Just say that we had evidence that the official story isn't true. What does it mean? Like, what happens? Like, you even see this with like stuff today of like
I mean, this
a lot of stuff around COVID that's just not
This is
doesn't
tinfoil hat.
doesn't jive with the full story. But I'm just saying, like, it becomes evident that it is true. Like, the CIA could come out right now and say, "Hey, we killed John F. Kennedy," and guess what? Like, what? Like,
Yeah.
what happens? What changes?
Everybody's dead that was involved.
I think that
Right.
there's a natural inclination that you want to say tinfoil hat on big conspiracies or big, when something's too big, people can't rationalize. In this case, it's too big. So we're like, it's tinfoil hat. So that's why people are like, man, if I go out on a limb saying there's no way this happened, it's fake. It was a conspiracy beyond one single shooter. You're made out to be crazy.
But see, here's my real question though: is like, say it's not tinfoil hat, and we have, I mean, just 100% proof that official story is wrong.
A CIA contract killer shot.
Let me
from the grassy
relay
knoll.
it to it.
CIA
Let me
code.
relate to it in our story that we kicked off on. There's a multi-billion-dollar organization that does stuff in AI. And it's kind of fucked up because people really want to see how much money you can make there. What just happened over the weekend? A huge coup. And guess who winds up at the big shop is the CEO that's sort of been orchestrating this from the beginning. When a lot of money or power come into play, weird shit happens. And in this case, there's no way our federal government, if they're guilty, y'all make the decision, is ever going to come out going, we did it. They're going to be like, we don't know what happened because it's too
Just my
big.
point is, if they did come out and say that they did it, still
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Like, shit,
So-
like what shit doesn't change. No one's gonna no one would do anything. Like, it's like, oh yeah, like
Mark's going to
we
not
thought
vote
that-
anymore.
Chuck's
Chuck-
finally gonna record a podcast. Like, I told you,
That's
motherfuckers, I was right. And that's like the fallout from it.
So one last thing, and I read this morning, separate source. David Blackman writes a Substack called Energy Transition Absurdities, but he has a sidelight. He's a real aficionado on the assassination. He's studied it for decades, has done a tremendous amount of research. And I don't subscribe to energy absurdities, although I will now. But the part I was able to read that was free was talking about, look, to understand what happened in 1963, as you piece all this together, you really have to go back to Prohibition. And before there was an FBI
Oh.
and CIA formally, you had as he described it, you had the Italian and the Jewish mafia who were really running amok, that ultimately JFK and RFK were
trying to rein in. In fact, so you can come up with all kinds of threads in that buildup of history that converge with those players defined as the FBI, the CIA, and then JFK and RFK. And if you've ever seen what was Scorsese's long kind of epic on Hoffa, The Irishman. Oh, yeah.
I
You
just
go
started watching that movie.
the whole RFK saga through the middle of that, right? So,
well, because you're bringing up the whole point is we talk about the CIA killed Kennedy. It literally could be us four got together because the CIA, the mafia, the Castro Cubans, etc. They were all running in the same circles trying to do stuff, and so using your contract bits and pieces from all those different organizations causes all of those organizations to cover their tracks, even if it was just one.
Right.
Yeah. So
anyway, fascinating stuff.
Cool. I have to check that out, man. We went across the broad spectrum today from OpenAI.
It's a holiday, man.
JFK. Yeah, it is a holiday. Hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving. We'll be back next week, so you got plenty of time to listen to the show. Share it with a friend. See y'all next time.